Alright, today I will be demoing the National Weather Service Enhanced Data Display version 4.4. To start off with, there is a Google Maps interface here in the middle. You can click and drag to pan. You can use the mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out. You can also use this zoom bar over here to zoom in or zoom out. And if you hold down the shift key and click and drag, you can actually do a zoom box. So you can use that to zoom into a location very quickly. Now, that's the mapping interface. Whenever you move your mouse, this little icon down here will update with the latitude and longitude of your location, and also the elevation. And if you want to, you can also show a very long version of that where you have decimal degrees or the US National Grid System or UTM, etc. So that is a quick overview of the map. Now on the left hand side there's a button up here. This is the interface button. And I start off with advanced, and that basically shows everything in ED. There's also a lot of different flavors of this. For instance, if you go to the basic version, it trims down all of those layers to this small little set here. And the way that these layers work is basically if you click the plus sign, it'll turn the layer on like this. And let's zoom out, find some rainfall and snow out there. And if you click the red minus button, it'll turn the layer off. Now this little slider here changes the opacity of that layer. So if you slide to the left, it's less opaque. Slide it to the right, more opaque. This little control down here controls the radar. You click the play button, it'll loop it. And this little slider will update with the current time of that radar scan. And there's a legend button up here in the top right hand corner. If you click on that, it will show you the radar reflectivity here, and also should sync this time with this time over here. Let's see here. We'll close that down for now. If the radar ever doesn't show up, you can use this secondary option here to bring up the secondary servers. And there's sometimes both of those may not work, just depending on demand from the user group in general. There's also the backup option here, where if you click on the checkbox there, it'll pull in a static one that does not loop. I'm going to close the radar down for now, and I'm actually going to switch back to the advanced panel. And then if I come down here to the more layers portion, there's actually a tricky way to add some more radar data. There's a folder down here called radar, and under there is a lot of different ways to display radar data. The MRMS layers here are multi-radar, multi-sensor data, and what those show is the multi-radar, multi-sensor data, which combines a lot of radars with ground-based observations and try to give you a complete picture of the radar data. Now, whenever a layer is selected down here, you can use this little opacity slider to change the opacity of that selected layer. So what I'll do now is just show you a fourth way to add radar data. And under more layers, if you go all the way down to the bottom, there's this universities and research. And the folks at the University of Wisconsin have created a really nice way to display all kinds of different information from satellite to radar. And this one's probably the most popular one. It's the precipitation phase, which shows you where there's snowfall and there's rain, and also the mix, kind of what you'd see on TV, the pretty colors. And you can click this little loop button to loop through the different frames that they have in there for the last couple hours or so. But you can also change the frames up here. So if I change this frames, say to 75, it's going to load 75, or I should say 60 frames, because I did put a maximum on there, 60 frames worth of radar data. And if you loop those 60 frames, that'll go all the way back to about 3 a.m. this morning, which is about 12 hours worth of radar data. And it'll take a little bit while all these actually come in, and I'm going to actually increase our loop speed here. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of data in there, and once it all does come, you'll get a full 12 hours of individual scans for rain, snow, and precip. So that's a really powerful tool. There's a lot of other things in here you can kind of peruse through to figure out, play with any of these sets, but by and large, it's pretty neat. So what I will do is close that down, and I'll continue off where I left off with radar up here. So what I'm going to do now is show you some of the other options here. If you click on this guy right here, this controls all the different radars across the country and shows you the layer age of the most recent scan. So if they're red, that radar hasn't had a lot of new data recently. If they're green, it's been in the last few minutes. So for instance, here's Charleston. You click on that and it'll pull up the latest reflectivity only for that radar, none of the other ones. So it's very specific. And what you gain from this one is the ability to, say, get some of the dual pole data and stuff like that, which again you can also get from the University of Wisconsin in a mosaicked view using that University of Wisconsin layer. Now this one takes a little while to finish all the requests because it has to wait for the other ones to finish, but eventually you'll get the data coming in. I guess this is storm total accumulation, but this guy right here is an archive data button. So what you can do is pull in that, and you can go back in time. Say, let's go back to a pretty good event, and it does say the data goes back 2 years up here as a disclaimer, although the person running this database has actually been populating it back and back further and further in time, so you actually might get data from even longer than that. But the cool thing is, what you see here is Hurricane Sandy coming on shore on the evening of October 29, 2012. So you can see where all of that is. And I'm also going to pull up the storm reports widget down here, bottom center. And what that does is it shows you, or at least gives you access to controls to show storm reports. If I uncheck this real-time button and it goes into archive mode, and I can go back here, say this is the same date, which is October 29th, and that should probably be sufficient. And what it'll do is it'll gather all of the reports for that specific night. And you can see there's a mess of them because there's a lot of stuff going on. But the cool thing is you can start slicing and dicing these reports. So for instance, if I wanted to only show the snow reports, it'll come in there and pull out just the snow reports. And some of them went in the database as heavy snow. And again, there's a lot of data that it's slicing and dicing here. There's a storm surge. There's thunderstorm wind damage. There's blizzard reports up here. Heavy sleet. I'm trying to figure out where the one is where it actually shows the numbers for the snow. Let's see. There it is. So what I'm going to show you now is a way to display storm report data on top of this map for an archive case. So I'll come down here to the map storm reports. By default, it starts measuring in real time and shows the last 3 hours, but I'm going to uncheck this real time box and I'm going to go back in time to October 29th, 2012. You can always change this date by clicking on it, but we'll start there and we'll hit apply. And what that will show is all of the storm reports from this very busy day. So in this example, if I only wanted to see snow reports, I could come down here and filter them out just by snow. And it got rid of all the other reports. And similarly, I can use my little middle wheel on my mouse button to toggle through all these different reports. This one is showing wind damage as Hurricane Sandy came on shore. And it color codes it by the severity, and I use that with this little color option here. If you don't want that, you can uncheck it and it changes it. Also, the size is determined by the severity too. So the stronger the winds, the bigger the value for that. So I'll leave both of those checked. If you don't want the icon, you can also just get the straight reports. And you can also show values, say, over a certain threshold. So if I only want to show everything that's above 75 miles per hour, you will see that it filters all of them out. And it's pretty powerful. You can keep on moving up through the different scales here and say, there's all the 90 knots, or 90 mile per hour reports here. And again, this is all archived data. So if I put it back in real-time mode, it'll get rid of all those. And if I take off this toggle here, it'll clear up the archived radar data. And now we're on to our next field. The next field I have up here is satellite data. If you turn it on, you'll see a nice loop of satellite data from the University of Wisconsin is actually providing this layer. And when you loop it, it'll sit there and go through all the different satellite values. And there's the scale for it. Any University of Wisconsin layer is labeled with this disclaimer up here that shows that we don't have control over that data set. So we're just kind of displaying it because it's something neat that we've found. If you check on this include radar precipitation box, it'll actually throw on the radar phase, precipitation phase, over the top of each layer. And it syncs both of those layers up, so that's pretty handy. And the looping controls work exactly the same as the radar controls. Now next is the tropical layer. I'll click it on, but there's not going to be anything because we're in the winter season here, but typically the National Hurricane Center probability cones would show up, and you could mouse over them and zoom in and interrogate them, much like many of the other things in ED. Same thing with these two fields here. So that leads us to the rivers quick layer. If you click on that, that will pop up all the rivers across the country that are currently flooding or forecasted to flood. And you can see that in the legend, that's what you're displaying. You can change that by clicking on this button and going to, say, just the currently flooding rivers. And that'll requery the database and you'll get just the rivers that are flooding. If you mouse over any of these, you can actually see the hydrograph with both the observed and forecast values on there. If you don't have this checkbox showed or toggled, you won't get the hydrograph. You'll just get the stage. It may make it run a little bit faster, but it's not too bad. You can scale the size of the icons with this. I'm going to actually go back to all of the rivers just so you can see. So there's the size of the icons changing. And you'll notice that some of these icons have a small circle inside of a larger circle. Well, what's happening there is the outside circle is the forecast stage, and it's colored by what stage is projected to reach to, while the inner circle is the observed stage, and that's what stage it's currently at. So that's how you read it, and you compare it to what's over here. It just adds a little more complexity to the data, but it also allows you to show a lot more data in one spot. Now, if you're not sure where these gauges are, you can click on the label up here and say which gauge are these by labeling it. And again, you can zoom in, and if you click on one of the gauges, you'll actually get a hydrograph for that specific gauge, and you can mouse over that and get the different heights, where it is and where it's going. It's very similar to what the AHAPS page has on their hydrographs. You can even show the crests on the graph and zoom in to specific levels using the middle wheel on the mouse button. That about does it for the rivers. There is a section over here called the RFC River Forecast Center data, which this stuff, there's a few things like, say, flash flood guidance in here, which you can toggle on. And when you do that, that's a pretty neat little layer that shows you how much rain it's going to take to actually flood in a specific spot, or at least cause a flash flood. And that's all based on the River Forecast Center guidance. So if you have a red area, it won't take a whole lot of rain before you flash flood, compared to a green area where you might have to take a lot of, you'd have to get a lot of rain to cause flash flooding. And again, that's nationwide. So those are pretty neat layers. Let's see. The other ones I won't go through. They're very similar. You can basically display them just like I did by clicking them on and off. Now, a very powerful layer in this whole interface is the NDFD forecast database. And this is what all the forecasters across the country are generating for forecast data every day, multiple times a day. So the way that it works is you toggle it on, it comes up with maximum temperature by default. And this is for the continental US. If you want to go out in time, you slide the valid time slider to the right, and it'll go query the database and pull back the new data for the next time period. Now, you have a bunch of points on the map, but you can actually increase the point density by sliding this to the right or to the left, just to, depending on how much clutter you like on your display. You can also control the size of the points. So if you want small, you can have them very small and a lot of them, or you can have them very large and a few of them. And you can invert the color too if you want to. So there's a lot of options here for points. One thing that most people are really interested in is how much is it going to rain in the next couple days, or how much is it going to snow. So I'll flip to the total new snow grid here. And what this does is it accumulates the snow throughout the period. So for instance, there's a lot of really large values up here in the Pacific Northwest. And if I start at the very beginning, you won't see a whole lot of snow show up. But as I add periods on to the end of that, it'll start accumulating it, and you'll get a running accumulation for that grid. Now if you go all the way to the far right, that's as much forecast data we have as we have for snow, and in that case you'll see the full storm total, or the next 36 hours or so accumulation, and you can see where the accumulation is between right here in the legend. And if you wanted to, you could actually throw an ice field on there too, just to see the difference. And I'll go into precipitation, total new ice. And this is this ice field, and I'm going to set this valid time on ice all the way to the end here. And then you can see the ice too. I do have a bug in the program where these things are not the right values. They're showing temperature, but I'll find that later. And again, opacity you can use with this one to kind of change the opacity of the two. So that's the NDFD. There is a lot of different ways to display this data. Like I said, there's a lot of fields here, from wind to weather to marine. What's the wave heights going to be? And there's different regions here. Right now I'm on the CONUS, but if I switch to, say, oceanic, it'll give me the wave heights across the entire ocean, because it pulls in Ocean Prediction Center forecast too. So there's a pretty large area where you can go in and interrogate. Now I'll move on to the next part of the demo, and that's just the observations. The observations layer, once you turn it on, it'll go out there and populate all the different observations around the country. Now it starts out with the meteorological display for the icon, and if you mouse over it, you'll get the actual values of that observation. You can click on the little graph button here to actually graph a 3-day history of what that observation has been doing. So you can see, it's pretty interactive. You can zoom in, zoom out to different portions of the graph. You can get the tabular data and sort it by values, and also filter out things. So if you don't want to see anything less than, say, 14, you can quickly filter out data, and you can get rid of the filter by clicking on that button. There's a way to get aviation type data too from these sites. Now, like I said, these start off with a meteorological display. If you don't like that, you can actually switch to an individual element. So say, for instance, if I just choose temperature, it'll show all the temperatures rather than the little meteorology icon. And again, those are all still interactive. You can mouse over them and so on and so forth. And you can also change their size. You can make them really big, you can make them really small. Let's see here. There's a little box here for ship observations. If you click on that, it'll go out and grab all the ship observations and color them in blue. And let's see, you can see I was going to say a couple of them did show up here across the Great Lakes and across Florida and the Gulf of Mexico. If I turn that off, you can switch the units here. You can increase or decrease the density. And an example of that would be coming in here, increasing the density. It's going to go out, query the server. It takes a few minutes, but it'll come back with a whole boatload of observations. And it might clutter up the interface to the point where you can't get to anything. There's a declutter button here, which if you uncheck, will try to show you everything that's available. But those things will keep on streaming in here and keep on going. Now, if you're back on the meteorological observation, you can actually come in here and let's change our density back to something reasonable. Give it 1 second because it's processing a lot of little points. We'll go like that. We'll make it small is probably okay. Now in here you can display what you want to see. So for instance, I default with temperature, but you can have, say, visibility, ceiling, flight category, dew point, peak wind gusts, a bunch of different things, present weather, and apply all of that. And what that will do is it'll go out and query the server and come back with all of these new attributes. Right now it's just sitting there trying to catch up to all the different things that I fed it, but there's the icon. If you look at the legend, not the legend, but the help menu has the icons explained, how they work, so on and so forth. So, the other neat thing you can do is filter them. So if I add a filter here, down at the very bottom here, let's see, we can come in there and say, show me where temperatures are between -90 and 32. So any temperature below freezing. And what it'll do is it'll go in there and filter out all the observations that are above freezing. So you really shouldn't see anything on this map that has above freezing temperatures. And then if you want to clear the filter, all you do is uncheck that button and hit apply, and all the filters will come back. Or you can hit this clear button right here, and that'll clear all the filters too. So that's the long and short of it. If you only want to see ASOS sites, you can come up here and switch this to ASOS, and it'll only show you the main observation sites. And so, for instance, you'll see blowing snow up here in Canada. And I think that's about all I want to say about the observations. Let's see. So we'll close that down. This little eyeball right here, this is the ObWatch. What it'll do is it will keep track of obs for you and color code them and update them every 2 minutes. And you can sync it to the map using this button over in the up and right hand corner. And instead of the station list that you have here, it'll go out and grab all the observations in the map view portal and display them. And for those, you can sort them by all these different values. And again, you can click on a station here and grab the observation graph for that specific station. So if I get rid of that, the fronts, I'm not too thrilled with them, but it'll show you where high and lows are and generally where the fronts are. But it needs a better way to do that. And then on here, this will show you the current sea level pressure contours, which is kind of neat. Upper air shows you the upper air data that comes from the balloon soundings. So for instance, if you click on one of those, that'll show you what the balloon did in the morning or afternoon run. Hard to read those, but that's where you get to that data. I forgot to say that there's also precipitable water climatology, shows you where you fall in the scheme of things. Same thing with climatology of 850 millibar temperatures. And you can change the date at which those are valid for. Then you go into the kind of the probabilistic things, say like the model spectrum. You can see that there's not data everywhere, and this is kind of on a Weather Service Office basis. They choose if they want to run this data set. But if I pick a place like, say, Minneapolis, what this shows you is a box and whisker plot showing all the different models, which if I show them here, that go into this box and whisker plot, and shows you where the NWS forecast falls in respect to all those models. The red colors basically say there's high model spread, where the green shows there's low model spread. And you can kind of show the trends too. If you click on this button, it shows you how the forecast has been trending through time. So this is a forecast 7 days ago, and this is it yesterday. So it's been kind of cooling down in the forecast trend, especially on this one right back here, where these little brown ones are the observation. But this is a 7-day forecast, so there's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, all the way out to 7 days. And you can also apply a bias correction to try to minimize that spread of the models. Here's a bunch of different fields that it's valid for. If you click on the pop one, it's going to go to probability precipitation and show you kind of where it's going to rain at. Same thing with wind speed. It kind of gives you an indication of where the models are going for wind versus us. And you can change all your different sites here if you wanted to do a different one, say like Eau Claire, or change your office to, say, Indianapolis, and so on and so forth. And the climatology in the background that I was showing you for, let's see, Minneapolis, which is right here. These ones right here show the record high and the record low temperature, and the normal high, the normal low temperature. And you mouse over it, you can get all that same information. So, pretty powerful little graph. If you have this little button checked, it'll actually show you a histogram for that specific point and where all of the data falls over an area rather than just at a point. So, each office defines the area for each one of these sites, usually on a zone around that site. So you can talk to your office if you're more interested in that. So that's all the model spectrum stuff. If you go over here, you'll get into the SREF plumes, and this just comes straight from the SREF. What this shows is basically you go over, you click on a little icon on the map, and let's go to a time that's a little closer, say like this one, and it shows you how much rain they're going to get. That's what total QPF is. And you can also throw the Weather Service forecast on there to see how that compares to what we're forecasting. And again, this is from the SREF. It's just running statistics on the model. And all these different options I'm adding are just adding standard deviation and stuff like that. And here's a legend up here for you. If you actually switch to snow, there's the total snow for the forecast, which is minuscule compared to what they have been getting. But you can mouse over it. It shows you kind of a summary down here, what the maximum amount is. If I do it for temperature, let's see. Here we go. So on temperature, you can see basically almost a hour by hour where things fall, and it's going to basically warm up, then stay warm, and cool off. And you can do that for any of these sites. If you just click around the country, it updates with the latest data, like that. And same thing with dew points, wind speeds, just a bunch of ways to look at probabilistic data. Here's a pretty good one actually in Huntington, where we're getting about 1 to 2 inches of rain here during our specific period. So that's the model spread. Webcams I get from a third-party service. It comes with this little disclaimer that just says these aren't coming for the Weather Service. We have no idea what they're going to show, but most of them are just travel webcam hotspots that you can mouse over and try to find out what's going on in a specific location. And again, we don't have control over this data, but they can be pretty useful if you're trying to find snow reports and the like. And a lot of them are actually in the wrong, not a lot of them, but there's a fair number of amount of them that are in the wrong location, and they all come from this webcams.travel site. And you can actually go in here and report if they are in the wrong location and add new ones if we don't have any in ED that meet your needs. Alright, so after the webcams, let's go to the outlooks. Under outlooks, this is just a quick way to get the SPC convective outlooks. And as you can see, there's a little area here in what is that, Arizona, that has a general convective outlook. And in the summertime, it's a lot more fun to see a lot more of these things. There's day 2 outlook. Day 1 through 7 QPF, found that under this icon. Shows you how much rain you're going to get throughout the week from the Weather Prediction Center. You can also throw where the drought is. Again, these are all National Center kind of outlook pages. Shows you where the drought is. If I come down here to, say, 8 to 14 day precipitation. You can find out compared to normal. Let me clear a bunch of these layers out just so you can see this a little better. Oops. All right. If I throw that back on, you can see compared to normal how our temperature is going to be, and as you can see, the probability of being above is pretty high for the next 8 to 14 days. So with the outlooks covered, we'll go to the backgrounds. There's a lot of different background maps available in ED. I default to the Esri World or National Geographic one, but as you can see, there's a bunch of them available. There's the Google Terrain one, which a lot of people are fond of, but it does require a Google contract, and I think that's going to go away, so that's why I switched away from that. But the nice thing is, when you do have the Google ones on, you can click on this stoplight, and that'll show you the traffic map, which is a nice addition. That works again for any of the Google ones, and I did make some darker versions, which are kind of nice to see if you're been staring at a screen all day. So there's Google Street, there's Google Hybrid, and if you go away from the Google ones, as soon as you go to the Esri ones, you lose the stoplight ability. Now, let's see here. In the night lights one, it's kind of neat because you can actually show the world at night. It might be a little difficult to see borders, so what I'll show you is under more layers, there's these boundaries, and there's some really neat ones that are called interactive. And for these ones, you can do the interactive state, and that shows all the boundaries, although you still can't see them because it defaults to black as the line color. But if I switch it to white, you'll see them appear. You can also change the thickness. If you don't want the labels, you can change the font size to 0, and that'll remove all the labels. If it's not opaque enough, you can change opacity, like that. And you can also say throw on an interactive county layer too, which, following the same line or principle, let's go 1, and let's change this to, yeah, that looks nice. So there's the counties, and a lot of times for counties, let's go into this area around Green Bay, you want to see their names. So I'll throw the names on there, and you'll see all the different counties with their names. And again, you can change the background layer to be just a blank one if you want. So that's just some neat things. The other interactive layer, there's 3 of them in ED right now, is the NWS office, the counties, and the states. If you switch on the office one, it shows you all the different forecast offices' geographical boundaries across the weather service. And again, those ones are the same. If you want to change the color, as long as the thing's highlighted, you can switch the color and change the thickness of it, and so on and so forth. You can even change opacity too. So I'm going to sweep out all those layers by clicking the clear button, and that'll clear anything down here in the more layers area. And I'll go back up to the backgrounds, and that about covers it for the quick layers. Like I said, this little clear button will clear out all your layers. Start you with a nice clean display. We'll go back to this one, and the last thing I'll show you, at least with regard to the quick layers, is this little button right here. This will actually hide and show the control panel. If you click it, it'll make you basically a full screen version of it, and if you uncheck it like that, it brings the control panel back for you. Now, down below, I've been showing you the more layers sporadically, but to get to it, you just toggle it on just using this button, and it makes the more layer tree appear down here. And under here, there's about 340 different layers or so, and it can kind of get overwhelming because depending on what you throw on there, you may or may not be able to find it, just given the folder structure that I currently have. The nice thing is you can actually search for a layer by name. So if I wanted to see anything regarding, say, precipitation, it'll dynamically search and find everything that's tagged with precipitation for that layer. So for instance, if I want to see, say, the last 90 days worth of precipitation, there they are. I always throw this little state overlay button on just because it's easy to toss it on over that layer. Now, for instance, if it did happen that the state overlay was below this layer, I'm going to take you up here to the top right hand corner, and there's something called the layer manager. If you have that on, you can actually move the order of the layers around. So what I will do is I will move the states underneath the precipitation, or the precipitation above the states. And sometimes if the click and drag doesn't work, when you have just a few layers up here, you can always use this move to top button. And now the precipitation layer is on top, and I can still control the opacity over here as long as it's selected. Just like I did the opacity over here. So that's pretty neat. I'm going to move the states up to the top because I like them up there. Radar and satellite are special layers, so that's why I kind of use these two. But generally, this layer manager allows you to keep all your layers in order and change the vertical index of the layers. And the refresh button here just refreshes this window and tells you which layers are currently visible in the display. And whenever you add a new layer, say if I came over here and added rivers, you'll see the rivers layer pop up in here automatically. And if I take it away, it should go away too. If it doesn't, the refresh button will do it. So that's a quick mini tutorial on the layer manager, and it probably will suffice for most of the things in Ed here. You can click and turn these layers on and off by just clicking on them. Something simple as that. And again, anytime you turn one of those on, they do show up in the legend with a legend for that layer. There's a couple different presentations depending on your color preferences, but this one's another version that I kind of like the best as far as precipitation. And again, there's 320 some odd layers down here to play with, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but that gives you at least a good feel for what you can do down here. One layer I will focus on down here that's a little hidden unless you are in the emergency manager perspective. If you're in there, one of the layers that shows up down here is a hazmat layer where you can actually pull in high split model runs. You actually have to know the number of your run, but this should suffice for now. So this is from a run back on August 9th. And if I go up to, say, 3,000, we'll see what the 3,000 run holds. If it works. Yeah, maybe it's not up to 3,000 yet. I should have this automatically update, but 2750, how about that? What? Okay, what we'll do now is show the 2600 option, and what you can do is cycle that out in time and see where some hazardous chemical may deposit. You can also find out a time of arrival for that as well, and that should display momentarily. Let's go back down here. So if you mouse over it, you can find out how long it's going to actually take to get to a specific location. Same thing with the concentration. If you mouse over it, you'll get the concentration at that specific location. So, for instance, there's the contours. And this only works in Google Chrome and Internet Explorer, because there's a bug with Firefox and the vector layers that I haven't yet figured out yet how to fix. Alright, so that does it for most of the special layers. There's really neat ways to pull up snowfall data, snowfall contours for the last 48 hours or so. And again, we're in the emergency manager perspective, so you might not be seeing everything. So if you switch to advanced, it will show you everything, including all the different types of airport guidance we have, including climate reports. I will go through the climate real quick. If you click on that layer, that's kind of a special layer. It shows you the climate information for a specific day. This one is for December 3rd, 2014, but you can pull up reports from other days, say like December 1st, or even back to, say, August. And what it will do, as it updates, you can label what it is currently displaying. Right now it's a high temperature forecast, or not forecast, but high temperature observation. But you can also do the record high for that day. And if you want to, you can filter this data too. So show me the values where it's greater than or equal to 80 degrees. And it pulls out all the 80-degree record high data down here. If you show, say, record high years, and show me years that are less than 1900, let's see here, where the record high was broken. There's not many of them. Most of them have been broken since 1900. Let's go back to, say, 1925. So yeah, there's some older records in there. Although that should have caught this one. Let me try that again. Yeah, there's the 1800 records that are still holding. And I'm going to switch this to the years color map, and if I sweep out this filter, it'll actually color code them by the darker the value, the older the record. So, and then if they're gray, they're missing. And I can easily go forward in time if I just put a 0 and get rid of the missing values. So they got rid of all those gray ones that we just saw. Anyway, pretty powerful interface. You can use it for a lot of different things, from precipitation to, let's see, if it's precip, let me change the precipitation to precip color curve. And only show me values greater than 0. Now it's filtering. So that's a pretty neat part of the application, and that's kind of a newer feature. Let's see. So that covered more layers pretty thoroughly. Quick links are kind of some of the cool little pages that I've found across the web that are hard to kind of decipher through all of our links, but there's ways to get to all the different information. One thing I will show in the bottom left down here, there's an NWS chat link. If you click on that, it'll pull in the NWS chat site. So if you're a government agency or working with the Weather Service, you can actually have NWS chat within ED and just have it minimized down here, and it'll still alert you to when new chats come in and so on and so forth. If this page doesn't load, you can always right click and say reload frame, and that'll force it to reload. And once you, let me just come in here real quick, and let's see here, I have to remember my password. If I log in, you'll see that it'll come in here and it'll automatically pull in the chat rooms, and there's a live look at the Charleston, West Virginia chat room and what's going on. And like I said, you can minimize it back here, and anytime you want it, you can pull it back up by clicking on it. So that gives you a good link to what's going on in the Weather Service. And again, to get a part of this, you have to go through your local office's WCM and request an account. And usually it's kind of for media and emergency managers. Let's see. One powerful aspect of the page I haven't gone over yet, but I should definitely make a mention of it, is the Save Share button, bottom center. This allows you to recreate ED exactly how you have it, or have left it. So if I had, say, these 3 layers on, and, well, there's no storm reports over here. Let's go up here. So if I had these layers on and I like this view and I didn't want to have to try to create the interface every single time, I could hit the Save Share button, and what that'll do is it'll create a long URL, and also a tiny URL, and a go.usa.gov URL. Both of these are much shorter than this long behemoth of a URL, And the tiny one is good for pasting on Facebook posts. The go.usa.gov one takes a little longer to generate, but when it does work, it's good for military applications because they can't hit these types of URLs. So depending on one of those, you can share it, share ed via social media, etc., and it'll quickly go and recreate ed just like you found it. You can also make a QR code if you want to include this same view in a presentation. You can copy this and paste it in a PowerPoint, and anyone in the audience can use their phone to scan it and go to ed. So if I actually go to the link that it generated here, you'll see that when it does come up, it pulls up all the layers that I currently had and maintains the order that they were in. So for instance, there, grab radar data, states, 48-hour snow contours, and also, oh, I had my high split one on too, so I grabbed that one too, which is still in the background. But yep, that's how that works. So be sure to use that often. Now, I've covered most of the stuff on the left-hand side and the bottom center. Now what I'm going to do is move up to the upper right-hand side. So up on the upper right-hand side, there are a couple different icons. This guy right here is the help menu, which you should use often. If you look at the version changelog, this is when we've released ed releases, and it kind of tells you what's new and what's been changing in the interface. There's a welcome page, which is kind of just a quick how to get started right off the bat. Just if that's all you need to know, it kind of lays it all out there for you. There's a user's guide, which is about 60 pages of reading. It's probably a little outdated now because I think it was last updated about 4 months ago. Explanation of the product. There are video demos on how to use certain components of ed, which this YouTube video will probably end up in there. There's ways to explain the products. It goes over the monospectrum stuff I was talking about earlier in each one of those. Travel hazard forecast, which I haven't touched on yet. And also GIS data sources. And if you click on one of these links down here, it actually takes you to a JS Fiddle on how to add this stuff to your own web page. There's a frequently asked questions section that allows you to kind of highlight the most frequently asked questions of ed, and also a credit section that says what we've used to build ed and who helped out in the process. So that's the help center. This guy right here will provide feedback and tell you, basically that goes directly to me and to some people at headquarters that gives direction. We've seen the legend quite often. There's a toolbox, and in the toolbox there's a ton of different options, and mainly this is your kind of place for doing some really cool things. One thing I will do is if you toggle the NOAA logo on, it adds a little meatball, the NOAA meatball for grabbing screenshots and such. There is a mobile version of ed. If you click on that, it'll actually take you to the mobile version. And in the mobile version, it's pretty lightweight. It doesn't have all the stuff that ed has, but the main difference between this and ed is that whatever's underneath this cursor here is where your map, it will grab forecasts from. So if I'm there, I click it, I get one for Denver International Airport. I click on this and I get the product over here on the left-hand side. Again, that's all the mobile version, and in here, like I said, there's many things that are very similar to the current ed, and it tries to grab all the stuff for you fairly quickly, even the observations. And on the observations, you can pull up the graphs of this data. Let me just see if I can get one that actually graphs data and interact with them just like you would on the other page. And let's go back to the actual ed display. Alright, there we go. So, alright. Now that we're back to ed and we went back to our tiny URL that we just generated, it's going to take us about here, and we'll clear everything off, and we'll clear that off. And So I hit the mobile version. There's a layer manager, which is the same thing we were showing you earlier. There is the save current state, which is the same exact button as this, but it's hard for people to find, so I added it here too. We've toggled the meatball on and off. Now, this guy right here, the add WMS service, this is a really cool part of the Ed application. What you can do with this is bring in your own layers and services from outside of Ed. And the way that that works is that essentially you set up a mapping service, whether it be a web mapping service or an ArcGIS REST service in your own organization, and you can just put the URL in this link. So let me show you an example here. I have a couple of them prefabricated. One of them is, say, wind turbine locations. What that does, it fills out a layer name, fills out a service URL for that specific service, and then the layers on ArcGIS layers you can leave blank, and it'll just add whatever comes up from the service URL. And I do have a few data sources where you can get these sorts of things, these data sets from, but like I said, you can bring in your own company's data or whatnot. And there's also a way to save this so you don't have to retype this every time. So once you get something that works, you can add it to the map. Let's see here. So this little guy right here, well, is just a quick way to remove that layer from the map so you don't have to go to the layer manager. And this right here will make a get capabilities request for the map server layers, which are these down here. And an example of a map server layer might be the wilderness preservation areas, which are up there. You can see how that layer is named WA. And if I did a get capabilities request on that layer, it comes up with an XML document with a lot of code, or I should say text, that takes a little while to filter through. And that might take a little while to load. I'm not sure why. There it goes. It actually reached the server. Thinking about it. But anyway, there's a couple other examples in here. Say visible satellite imagery from Iowa State. Or you can add I've killed it. Say average annual precipitation. And this little guy just is a quick way to bring up the layer manager. So, and this one, if I don't want it quite that opaque, you'll see how it changes that layer. Visible satellite, I don't want that anymore. Nor do I want this. Just a way to use Ed to your fullest capabilities is to bring in your own data in addition to what I have in here currently. And example saving a layer, you just save it, give it a name, you can click save, and now it shows up in the save layer down here. So anytime I bring that back up, it comes and populates this menu. So for instance, let me go over here. Let's throw in bathymetry for, say, the ocean. And let's see, I don't see much populating there. Let's throw in interstates. How about that? So there's interstates. Save that layer. I'm going to save it as interstates. Now I load it. If I want to load it, I can quickly just pull it right back in, and it'll fill out this stuff and add it to the map for you. So that covers bringing your own data. So now we're to the point where I've gone through everything up until add WMS service. You can add your KML, own KML from your local machine. Same thing with shapefiles, and even place markers in GeoJSON. Let me actually pull this guy up real quick, because this is kind of a complicated interface. But the neat thing is you can actually build your own file really quickly by right-clicking on the map and saying add place marker. And what that'll do is it'll populate this with that place marker, and wherever you click, it'll add the icon from this image. So for instance, there's an icon for that. We can put some radiological waste there, and some ambulances over here. And then after you make all of your icons, you can actually export this sheet to a CSV file and give it a name, and it'll download to your computer. So the next time I come back and look at the page, let me clear all those out. And so after I'm all done and come back to the page again freshly, what I can do is I can go add a place marker and edit it, but I can come up here and reload those same files like I said before, and it grabs all of them for you. And if you have any attributes on these, say like a name and test 1, test 2, test 3, if I hit refresh button, it'll actually add that attribute to these, so you can see the name shows up there as one of the attributes. So this is really cool if you have a spreadsheet with latitude and longitude locations. You can just export it as a comma-separated variable file and pull it right in here using this choose files, or just copy and pasting the file in here and refreshing it. You can do that for GeoJSON too, so that's kind of a smart little thing here. So you can build a list of all your favorite webcams, and if you have this button checked, it makes them a little bit larger, and then it actually pulls up the image of the webcam if you had it there. So next, what I'll do is I'll go down here and show you how to use the range ring. To place a ring on the map, you click on this button, click where you want the ring, and there it is. It's a nice little range ring. You can choose the fill opacity and also the radius, so if you want to make it bigger or smaller. This is kind of nice if you're keeping track of weather, getting in a certain location from you, or find out how far it is away from you, 292 kilometers. And you also combine them, so if I have this combine button on, I come up here and I type in 50, it's going to add a 50 ring. If I type in 150, it's going to add a 150 ring. And then if I change the fill opacity, you can see how you can quickly get a lot of different range rings really quickly. If you click the X button, it'll get rid of them for you. Time of arrival tool. If you click on that, I'm going to get the radar in motion here, and I'm going to zoom into, say, this area because we have some neat echoes going on. The way that it works is it tells you exactly what to do. Click where the storm currently is, so it's right here. And where was it when it first started? So what I'll do is I'll stop the radar from looping. There's where it was, and it was right about here when it first, if you kind of track that echo on radar, you'll see where it was, where it's going, and then you can say, how far is it going to get until it hits me in, say, Pittsburgh? So I'll say that little echo right here will make it to this location in approximately 4 hours and 13 minutes, or around 6:55 p.m. And it uses the radar time as an estimation, which is about 50 minutes in the past. But if you knew that you're tracking a larger feature, say on satellite, and you knew the last feature was there, say let's go 200 minutes ago, it just changes the algorithm and it speeds it up. Most of the time, if you're just using the radar data in ED, you won't need this option, but you can see where that could be useful for other things. So, close that down. There's a measuring tool. If you want to know the length of a line, you can click once on the page, once on the map, click another time on the map, click another time, you can measure that line. If you want to get fancy, you can hold down the Shift key and make an arrow. Same thing with areas. If you hold down the Shift key, you can draw something like this, and I give you a bunch of different units to output in, or you can just do polygons. Double click to finish it. Same thing with the Shift key. If you hold the Shift key down, draw right before you're done, let go of your mouse, then let up on the Shift key, and you'll have a nice area. If you do it the other way, like this, and you let go of the Shift key first, and then you let go of the mouse, it's going to kind of be static. So you want to make sure you let go of that mouse first. So Shift, click, drag, swipe, and let go of the mouse, let go of the Shift. Done. Same thing with the line. when you're holding the shift key, let go of the mouse first before you let go of the shift key. So that's the way the measurement works. And if you notice that these tools, when I was using them, they're actually changing the mouse click control on the map. And down here, it defaults to a public marine forecast. So when you click on the map here, it's going to bring up the hourly graph and text forecast and so on and so forth. But if you have it selected to the measuring tool, it's going to bring up the measuring tool. So when your mouse clicks now, get funneled to this tool instead of the other one. Same thing with drawing tool. If you're trying to draw something on the map, you can draw that and say there's a cold front coming through right here, and you can say that it's moving this way, etc. And also put some points on the map. So that's the drawing tool allows you to annotate the map. And there's a fire weather forecast that if you have that clicked and you click on the map, it's going to go and grab a fire weather forecast rather than the typical public zone forecast. And it may take a little longer to grab this, but eventually it will come up with your fire weather forecast. This is the default hourly graphs that the Weather Service displays, not the interactive ones that are typically on ED. And I did that mainly because they have a lot of parameters that I can't get to through my database, like lightning activity level. And same thing with the tabular one. This is the default one. So, and then finally, there's an option over here to request a spot forecast if you're looking to burn a brush of wildfire for a national forest or something like that, or doing a search and rescue exercise. Just be aware that this is mainly for government agencies or search and rescue type operations, because that goes directly to the forecaster. Now, let's see, if I go back up to our list here, I just covered the drawing tool. The zoom, it's alright. You can zoom around the country by just choosing where you're going. I talked about adding this to the mouse over option back here. Turning on serif fonts, an example of that would be when you have a lot of these things. Sometimes the fonts get a little funny when you have the serif fonts on, and if you just change it a little bit here, you can see how the fonts are a little more just mono-spaced and not as pretty. And for example, like that. So, and that goes all across the interface from storm reports to what the NDFD forecast displays for their values back here. So if I turn that off, you'll see how the fonts, or turn it back on, the fonts change a little bit. And I just kind of triggered them to redraw by just changing the zoom level, because if you move left or right, it probably won't redraw the layer, and that triggers that to kick that off. Weather effects is something fun that just lets you know when it's raining or snowing outside based on this observation. So if I actually turn them on, you'll see little raindrops falling across the screen. So anyway, when you turn that tool off, it'll turn off those weather effects. And the weather effects actually do slow down your PC a bit because they use your processor to generate the data. So I've covered everything all the way up until this little guy right here where I told you how to change your site when you click the map. Now be sure when you're done to uncheck that box so that wherever you click on the map next won't change your site. So now, as you can see, I'm kind of stuck in, say, Minneapolis. If I click on that, the page will default to Minneapolis. So next time I come to the page, your 32 will actually refer to Minneapolis instead. And this is a quick look at your 7-day forecast and any watches and warnings or advisories in effect. So if I look at the forecast grid again, I'm going to go to look at the hazards to find exact hazards, and we have a lot of fun up here going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my site on MapClick, and I'm going to click right here in the middle of this really nasty looking thing. And then when I come up to my hazard again, you'll see that I have an ice storm warning for my location. And I'm going to uncheck that so that keeps that site. So the next time I come back to ED, if I refresh it, And while it's refreshing, notice that it's tested in these versions of the browsers, and it's really best in Google Chrome because that's what I usually develop in. Now you can see that that same observation site has stuck to that place in Washington with the ice storm. So that's kind of a point of contention. And if you want to, you can actually grab the ob history too, and it brings up your obs for that specific location. So on and so forth. Now, there's a search map function here, which just kind of just repositions the map on a place, say like Denver. It just centers a map on it. If you zoom in, you'll get close to the location. This refresh timer tells you how often it's going to go and query the back-end layers that are currently displayed. And I think default, it's, let's see. I think by default it's set to 5 minutes down here on this little widget, and right now the layer age is 0 and gives you the current time and the Zulu time. And that covers most things in the map. Now, I did save one of my favorite features for last, and that's the travel hazard forecast. There's a few different ways to bring it up. One is this icon right up here. It's called the travel hazard forecast. If you click it, it will bring up the interface. Also, if you change your interface over here to the travel option, it will bring it up. And the third way to bring it up is if you right-click on the map and set a start point, it'll go in there, grab that point, and automatically insert it in here. Similarly, if you want to add an end location, you can come here and right-click and set an end location. It's just a quick way to get all of your points quickly added rather than having to type them out. Now, as you see, as we come across Washington State here, you run into some of that ice that we were showing you earlier from the forecast database over here. So if I switch that back over to hazards, you'll see that when you run into that ice, there's your hazards. So the way this works is when you are looking at this route, along the route you hit these segments here. The segments show you all the potential values along that segment. So for instance, you have temperatures ranging from 27 to 32 degrees, where the point here shows you the worst case conditions of all those. So for instance, 27 is the coldest temperature on the preceding route or the following route. So that's the difference between the two different mouse overs, and they both kind of show you what you're going to expect. So there's a lot of different options in this widget, and it can be very powerful. What you're seeing as the numbers back there are temperatures, but you can display anything of those, any one of those attributes you want. For instance, max wind gust. You can also depart on a different day, and you can also change your travel mode if you want to go by bicycle instead. In that case, you might actually not have too many difficulties by the time you get there because the storm will be gone. But you might have some stuff along the way in this range. You can add a different route. Say you don't want to go that direction. You want to stop down here in Boise. You can add a waypoint down in Boise, and it'll recalculate your route based on that. I'm going to go back to the vehicle just because it's more exciting. So in this instance, you're going to go back down through Boise, and you still end up hitting some of that storm by the time you get there around 11 on Friday. And again, the trip takes about 22 hours, 5 minutes, 1,482 miles. You can get rid of all your waypoints if you sweep them out like that. You can switch your directions if you want to go from Seattle backwards to wherever we're going in South Dakota, Meadows, South Dakota. You can avoid tolls and stuff like that. If you're typing in a location, you can actually just type it in here. If I say Denver, Colorado, I can head out that way instead. And the neat thing about this is you can try to reroute your trip to get away from that ice. So in this example, I'm going to go down to Portland instead, and I still end up hitting a bunch of ice. So maybe let's go down to Sacramento. Not that this is the most efficient route, but it shows you how you can try to reroute your trip to make it work. Same thing if I got rid of these 2 points and I just decided that I'm going to leave on Saturday instead of today. In that case, when I go, everything should be pretty decent. So, say I travel this route quite often, I can actually save this route using the save button here and say, we'll say Seattle to Denver. If I save the route, it automatically adds it here, and you can see up here that your route was saved. Alright, so after we save that initial route, I can actually come back here and choose a different route. So we were on Seattle to Denver, and so that'll draw that one, but say I also like to drive from Helena to Bismarck. If I switch to that one, or I'll automatically complete these things for you and fill out that route. So that pretty much covers the inland portion. There is another icon over here for sailboats. If you flip on that, it will actually bring up another type of interface. And this one tells you how to use it. It's just like the measuring tools, but instead you can get a forecast over the waters for it. So for instance, if I come up here to Portland, Seattle area, and I want to go down the coast, I can come down the coast and I can go out into the ocean, and based on my vessel speed, I'll probably run out of forecast data sometime in the central California area if I'm only going at 12 knots. Well, maybe it's going a little farther. You're out to Sunday, December 7th. Well, we might actually make it. So, yeah, I guess we did make it the whole way. So, if I hide the icons, changing my icon display, you can see that there's my parts of my route where in this area I'm going to run into some waves and some wind. Same thing down here. This one's still kind of a danger area. If I go to some place like the Great Lakes and go like a ship would maybe do, you can see how there's some pretty decent sailing conditions there. Most of them's green. The legend kind of gives you an example of what it color codes the legend by. You can also, again, throw your maximum wind speeds and all that data on there. And choose a different date to leave on. Same thing, you can save your route. If I wanted to, I could save Great Lakes. And now that's one of my options. So if I come back to the page, this is one thing that won't save, is the marine travel hazard forecast route, just because they're a little more complicated because I'm not using a routing service. And if I bring that back up and I bring up my previous Great Lakes route, there's the same route I just took. If you ever want to delete a route, you can click on the save button, and there's an option in here to remove a route. You can also change the density. I have it pretty high just to make sure I catch everything, but you can also make it pretty weak too, or pretty light. And finally, I was going to show you that for the forecast, travel hazard forecast, if you do end up making a route, that when you do save and share the link, that will go with it. So if I go to that same link that I just created and I send it to somebody like Aunt Edna, you'll see that this thing automatically populates all of those places and grabs you that same travel hazard forecast area. Well, that basically concludes the NWS Enhanced Data Display demo for version 4.4. If you have any questions, feel free to use the feedback form or just holler at me. My information is under the credits. My name is Jonathan Wolf, and I'm the lead developer of the interface. So that's all I have for you. Thanks for watching.